Hello and welcome. If you're new here, my name is Manur and I'm a second year PhD student at Oxford University. Today, I wanted to talk about my life before Oxford. So, before I came to Oxford, I did my master's at the National University of Science and Technology in Pakistan. So, this university was in a different city than my hometown, and for doing my master's, I had to travel to that city and live in a hostel, which was a new thing for me. And the biggest thing that came with this university was that it was incredibly expensive and I couldn't afford it. So the thing is that I did my bachelor's in a public university in Karachi, which is my hometown, and it did not cost me anything because I gained an admission on merit and it was a government university, so I didn't have to pay a lot. It was only the exam fees that I ever had to pay, and which only came up to 6,000 Pakistani rupees, which is about 10 or $15, I think, which is absolutely nothing. And that is all I ever had to pay. But this changed dramatically when I moved to Islamabad for my master's. Number one, I had to live in a hostel, I had to pay rent and everything. And with that hostel came the messing fee or the food budget. And whether you ate there or not, weirdly enough, they did have a rule that if you're staying in that hostel, you have to pay 6,000 rupees for the mess every month, whether you eat there or not. That was an entirely different story. And this is just the living and survival cost. The university fee was a huge burden on me. It was about 80,000 rupees per semester. And for some weird reason, they did have about 10,000 rupees of tax on students. I don't know what that was, but it was a tax on students studying there. So we had to pay our fee, we had to pay a hostel fee, we had to pay for the food, of course, which is justified, but then we also had to pay tax, which I do not understand till today. So, all in all, this was an extremely expensive university for me, and I sometimes think how I managed going there. I mean, I didn't have the resources until today. It just haunts me to think the amount of money I've used there. I don't really have regrets because it was something I wanted to do and it was my own decision. I wasn't forced into it, but it did prove too heavy on my pocket and on my mental health. The only reason I chose NUST, despite it being extremely expensive, was that there's a weird kind of educational system in our country where every city, every university has their own rules which do not apply anywhere else. And I wanted to get my master's done in 2 years maximum. I didn't want to go beyond that. And Karachi University, for some reason, does not give you an MPhil degree easily. Some people get it within 2 years. It's really hard to get a degree of MPhil within 2 years from Karachi University, or it was at that time when I did it back in 2016. Maybe some changes have occurred since then. I do not know of, and I do not claim to know everything. So I'm sorry if I offend someone, but that was the case in my time. So ultimately, the only reason I did choose NUST was because of the 2 year part. And the reason I was so hooked on getting it done in 2 years because my major goal was to go abroad for a PhD. Because one thing I knew was that the kind of research I want to do, the field that I'm opting for, does not really exist in Pakistan. And if I wanted to work on viruses, really worked in tissue culture and like manipulating viruses and having a kind of degree where my research is directly translated into the industry, that was not possible in Pakistan. So my aim was to go and do something like that in another country. But the decision in front of me at that time was whether I want to use the little amount of money that I had gathered through jobs to take the IELTS test and take a chance at applying abroad, or whether I want to start my master's. I did not want to give a gap between my undergrad and master's. I do not know why I had that kind of thought. I know in retrospect that it doesn't really matter so much, but to me it mattered at that point in time, and I just wanted to get it done, get it out of the way. So I chose to start my master's right away because I had written to a lot of professors for my master's and didn't hear back, and I did not have any sort of exposure or guidance to understand whether it would be possible for me to apply abroad directly for a PhD after my undergrad. Now I know better. In the UK, especially after an undergrad, you can directly apply for a PhD after an undergrad. But I did not know this so well back then. I had an idea, but since I wasn't hearing back from anyone, I just didn't know how to go about it, and I didn't want to waste a complete year just trying to apply. So I did start my master's, and at that point in time, I was doing two online jobs and earning as a writer. So I did have enough money to start, but I had my doubts about sustaining this, because this was not a sustainable approach. If I was also studying at that point in time and I had to do my jobs, how do I get enough money to pay my rent, pay the fee, and everything? And once I reached there, because before reaching there, I thought it was just the cost of the fee, the hostel fee, and maybe the mess. Once I reached Islamabad, it just occurred to me that it is a really expensive city. Karachi was relatively cheaper, food was cheaper, everything was easy, and I was living with my parents. So, in my mind, I did not have the cost of the various other things that you have to take care of while you're living alone. So, it just came down onto me as immense cost that you come up with every day, and it's just like giving money away almost every day. So once I reached there, it was a few friends who advised me that I should just get started, I shouldn't think too much about it, and maybe I would apply for a scholarship and something. I had good merit, I would find something. So just with a lot of thoughts and uncertainties, with all the money that I had managed to gather between the time of my undergrad and starting my masters, just went into my fee. And with time, I did run into deficits. I did take a loan from one of my friends at the time I left Karachi, and I'm incredibly thankful to those one or two friends who actually proved their worth in time, and they helped me through everything. So I'm incredibly thankful to them. As time passed at NUST, cost came up almost every other day. It became an immense struggle for me because I was taking classes by the day. I was working as a writer by the evening, sometimes till past 2 or 3 a.m. every day, and I was averaging on about 3 or 4 hours of sleep for many months. So I couldn't really complain because this was something I wanted for myself, and I went in knowing that it would be expensive. It was just that I hadn't realized what kind of an impact it would have on my physical and mental health, and how much I would actually be struggling. So it was a constant struggle. Those 2 years of my life that I stayed at NUST, I studied there, I think are the biggest nightmare I have lived through yet. And I hope something like that never comes along again, because it was an immense struggle every day. There were times when I couldn't sleep even after working so much because I was just so tired. I don't think I would recommend NUST to anyone because it's just too expensive. If you can't afford it, maybe, I mean, I have done a degree there, yes, and I did have my fair share of enjoyments and good experience, but the bad experiences, the impact on the health and the impact on my life in general, I think, was quite negative. I became quite a bitter person because I was just constantly working. I wouldn't want to justify my bitterness or anything negative because of this, but I think it did have an immense impact. If you're not sleeping well, if you're constantly struggling and you can't even go home. So the thing is that Karachi and Islamabad are quite far away, and I couldn't even go home during weekends or during the long holidays between semesters. A lot of my friends did go home on weekends, and I was staying mostly alone in the hostel on those days because other cities were quite closer, and traveling to Karachi would have meant spending about 10 to 15,000 just on plane tickets. And if I wanted to travel by train, it would have proved slightly cheaper, but the distance made it about a 24 or 25 hours worth of travel, which I just couldn't afford to do it. And especially alone in a country like Pakistan, a girl traveling alone is just not safe. I couldn't do that. And a person like me who falls asleep right away as the car starts moving, I never thought I could do that. So it was proving extremely hard. I couldn't go home and I couldn't ask for support. The thing is, if I asked for support, people would tell me, but you asked for it yourself. You went into NAS thinking that you could afford it. And actually, one person in the scholarship office at the administration did tell me exactly that. And by the way, NUST administration, I think, is the worst possible administration in the world as far as I have experienced, because I did study from a government university, and I had always heard that government officers are probably the worst, they're rude, but I never faced this kind of rudeness and bluntness anywhere, but I did face this at NUST. I went for a scholarship interview within NUST, and they never gave the results of who got the scholarship. The results never came after the interview, and we couldn't find out what happened after that interview. But those were need-based scholarships. So I did go and ask if I could find out what happened if I am even in the list to get the scholarship, because I needed it. And the thing is, that person over there who was in charge of the scholarships told me, if you couldn't afford it, why did you come here? And why are you asking about scholarships? You didn't get it. And I'm like, okay, but you could straight away tell me that I didn't get it. You didn't have to tell me that if I couldn't afford it, I didn't deserve to be here. And all this happened during the time when I had written a grant project which I submitted with my supervisor, by the way, was always supporting me. And if not for those two, three teachers and my supervisor who supported me, I think NUST would have been an even bigger nightmare for me than it already was. So I did tell my supervisor that someone has been this rude to me, and actually, the student coordinator of my department handed me the admission withdrawal form and told me, if you can't afford, just take this form, fill it, and leave the university. And I actually filled that form, and I was ready to just withdraw my admission from that university because A, it was expensive, it was a nightmare, and people there were so rude that if you can't afford to study, your merit doesn't matter. You know, with the banners that university have, that we are the number one university and we care for merit and we care for people on their intellect, well, that's all just that's all just BS, and they don't care about you. They just care about the money. These universities are money making machines. And then when I was about to do that, that is when a few teachers stepped in, and I did get some help from here there, and I had some of my own money as well. So I survived another semester. And the grant that I had written with my supervisor did come through. It was a project that I had conceived in my mind, and because teachers are the ones who can apply for grants, my supervisor did apply, and he won the grant. It was for 3.2 million rupees. And the university was still telling me that if I couldn't afford it, I shouldn't be at NUST. I mean, just look at the audacity. I did complain to the pro vice chancellor in the middle of 200 people in a seminar. I did stand up and say that this is your university. You claim to care about your students. You claim to be the best university and you claim to care about merit, and this is what you're doing. And he was shocked because I spoke in front of 200 people. And he told me that, oh, you should come and meet me. We did not know this had happened. And like someone who has earned for our university is being treated this way. And you should come and talk to me. So I did go to his office thrice, and he never met me. He never ever showed his face again. It was just in the middle of 200 people when I embarrassed him that he wanted to show that he would talk to me, and this was something beyond his knowledge. But actually, no one cares. If you can't afford it, the thing is, education in most parts of the world is extremely expensive. I get that, but I had the merit, I had helped the university earn, and they still had the audacity to tell me that if I am poor, I don't deserve to study there. And that's fair, okay, they are there to earn money. But all in all, the thing was that I had opted to study at NUST. If I complained to someone, they would just straight away tell me, well, then why did you come here? You can't afford it. It's proving difficult for you. You shouldn't have come here. My difficulties did continue for all the duration that I was at that university. It was a nightmare. And I was still working, of course, because I was not taking complete fee from anyone. And I still had to juggle between two jobs. My research was delayed initially because the university again claims to be the best, but does not come through. It has terrible administration. I hope they become better with time, because the kind of name and ranking they have in Pakistan, they do not live up to it. It seems good from the outside, but when you get there and you get to live there is when you find out how much they actually care about students. It's all about the money as far as I know. So I was still working two jobs, and while it is possible to do it, I think if you are working so much, constantly using all your money for your studies, and not getting mental peace, not getting any kind of support from the administration, not in terms of money, I mean just peace of mind, just having your work done in time, just having your documents signed in time. I think I never faced this much of trouble when I was studying for free in University of Karachi. If a document needed signing, it was done. There were no delays. And with NUST, after I completed my degree and had my viva and everything, it took them 2 months to sign for my transcription, which is insane. And I already had admission at Oxford, and I told them, I need to leave the country. Please, can you sign for my transcripts? I've already completed my degree 2 months ago. And it took many, many, many rounds of their offices to get that done. So whatever I earned just went into my degree. I do not regret it because I wanted to do it, but I do want to put it out there for people who claim these universities are the best, the top ranking universities are always the best. I don't think so. Unless a university cares for its students, unless a university has humans there in their administration, unless they treat their students well. I think universities are made up of students. Any lab, any research department cannot prosper without its students. And if a university doesn't care about its students, especially students who are trying to fund themselves, who are trying to make the university earn, I mean, I not only paid my fee, I helped the university earn a good project. It was a government funded project. a 3.2 million rupees project, which is still running. They've hired people to run their jobs, and I still had to struggle in that kind of university. I mean, I would never have any love for that kind of institution. Yes, I found a few good friends. I found a few good teachers who have supported me through and through, and I'm incredibly thankful to all of them. But the university administration is terrible. It's just pathetic. And I hope more people are honest. I don't know why people don't want to speak up about this. Whenever I've spoken against the administration or spoken against these atrocities, I have been shut down. Even those people who supported me did not want to listen any such thing, because of course they associated with that university, they wouldn't want. And I know by saying this here today, I will be offending a lot of people, but I just want this to be put out there. Yes, it was my decision. Yes, I can be blamed for choosing NUST myself. But if an administration does not have people who are human enough to talk normally to others, if they can degrade people depending on their social status or whether they can afford the fee, I think that university does not deserve to call itself a good education institute, because education goes beyond money. And since Pakistan does not have a lot of scholarships, but I want to say this, there were scholarships, we never found out who got them. And by the end of my degree, I found out that these scholarships went to the students whose teachers were either principals of that department, either in a good position within the administration, or whether they favored those students. So, yeah, there were three people in my department who got the scholarship. I have nothing against them. But these were the people who had supervisors that were either the principal or well connected within the scholarship department. So you see how it works. The university did not have the money to support someone who was on merit, who helped them earn, but they would support someone who would benefit them in terms of relationships with their supervisors. So, like, reflecting on what happened with me and how I managed, it was suffocating. I was putting all my money there, and if I hadn't done that degree, I was earning a sufficient amount. But just because that university was incredibly expensive, all my money just went there. But if I had another way, I think I would still want to experience it. No regrets in terms of experience, no regret in terms of putting money into my education, because that is an investment, and I wanted to do that investment. But all in all, it is like a disappointment, a huge disappointment, because I went there with a lot of hopes. Since it is the number one ranked university in Pakistan, I went there with a lot of hopes in terms of studies as well. And I can do a detailed review of the kind of studies there, but it did not live up to my expectations. Except for one or two teachers, I think it wasn't up to the mark of rankings. I don't know how they get that, but maybe it's just one or two departments that are performing well and the university gets ranked well. But I wasn't satisfied with the kind of education I got there. The lab experience was necessary. I did want to experience that. I did want to experience NUST and probably increase my chances of going elsewhere. But interestingly, my degree at NUST did not play any role for my admission in Oxford. Probably the lab experience helped, but they did not care of my degree, because the time that I got admitted at Oxford was the time when I was only halfway through my degree at NUST. They never asked me for follow up on transcripts or my degree after I got admission, because my admission was already confirmed before I completed my degree at NUST. Although I have no regrets, but I do want to be honest about it, and it's difficult for people to survive. So if you are struggling with money, don't go to NUST. Just don't, because as much as they claim to have scholarships, as much as they claim to care for merit, they do not. That is the honest truth. If you really want to experience that NUST life, make sure that you can fund yourself, because although I was earning really well and I wanted to do it myself, but it just took a lot of money, a lot of my mental health, my peace, and I got habitual of stress eating a lot, because I felt like there's nothing else to my life rather than keep earning, keep studying, keep paying, and there's no money in my bank. I did a lot of stress eating. I was constantly unable to fall asleep, constantly unable to relax. Those 2 years were the years when I don't think I ever relaxed. So, if not for those friends that I found there, if not for those two or three good teachers, I think NUST would just have been more and more terrible for me. Yeah, but in retrospect, I wanted to do it, and yeah, people would blame me still for wanting to do it, even though I did not have the money. But yeah, that just goes to show that money matters the most in the world. And educational institutes do need to improve a lot, because you take the best students from across Pakistan, right? And then you cannot even provide them any kind of help if they are struggling. You do not care about what it takes for them to be studying at your institute, because NUST only takes the best from the entire country and then it doesn't care what happens to those people. I just hope they improve, and I know a lot of people would hate me for doing this, but I wanted to be honest about it. So, yeah, that's my experience. That's how I funded my master's. It took me 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, and a bit of help here and there from a few friends. I did take a lot of loans that took me a year after I passed out to overcome, and yeah, it was a lot of money, health, and peace just going into that degree. I still wouldn't say that I regret it because I did find some positives out of it, but that is an honest account of what happened with me and how I funded it. All in all, I would say that if you want to study at a private institute in Pakistan, then you need a lot of money. You can absolutely do a part-time job, but it will take a toll on your mental health, on your physical health, and it might just not be enough because the prices keep increasing. They impose tax on students, and they do not provide any kind of health support or even any kind of installments for fee. The installment procedure is another joke. It's just 20 days that they give you for paying the second installment, which is a big joke in itself because no one can gather that amount of money in 20 days. So, yeah, affordability is important if you want to go to a big institute in Pakistan. That was my experience. I would conclude this here before I offend any more people. If you want to hear more about my experiences and how I reached Oxford and how I find the life at Oxford, please subscribe to my channel. And if you think being honest was good and you're not angry with me, please give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.